This is Sg2 Perspectives, a conversation with Sg2 experts and industry thought leaders about the biggest trends in healthcare and what we expect that's going to mean for the future of healthcare delivery.
You've got to have that foundation of trust with your partners. We've got to trust the table stakes are important. If we're not getting the day-to-day operational things right, that level of trust erodes and we can't have these conversations. It's almost like a bit of a dating period before you get into the marriage.
Welcome to Sg2 Perspectives. I'm your host for today's episode, Jayme Zage. In today's episode, I wanted to build on some of the great discussions we had at Sg2's Executive Summit. These discussions were focused on unique partnerships between provider and supplier organizations. My guests today are Dr. Eric Monday, the Executive Vice President for Finance and Administration, as well as the Co-Executive Vice President for Health Affairs for University of Kentucky, and Jeff Moser, the Senior Vice President for Partner Strategy at Compass One Healthcare. Thank you so much, Eric and Jeff, for being with me today to talk about your partnership experience.
My pleasure.
It's great. Glad to be with you.
Tell me a little bit, Eric, about your role at the University of Kentucky and how it relates to this idea of fostering partnerships with suppliers.
We operate under a dyad model. We have two co-executive vice presidents. One of my roles is to look at our partnerships on our health affairs side of our business. When we think about UK healthcare, how can we engage in deeper partnerships? How can we sustain those? We see partners are an essential way in which we are able to provide improved access, improved quality, improved outcomes in our patient care enterprise.
Jeff, how about you? This is a new role at Compass One, this partnership focus.
Yes, I started with Compass One in February of this year as their Senior Vice President of Partner Strategy. It's been an evolving role that we've been talking about at Compass One for a number of years. The nuts and bolts of it are we see the importance of partnering with all of our clients across the country. Compass One Healthcare works in over 2,200 healthcare organizations across the United States. We provide a multitude of services that all relate to support services, including food, nutrition, environmental services, patient transport, patient observations, biomedical engineering support, facilities management. So all those things that are support services that sometimes get overlooked in the strategy of an organization. A progressive organization like University of Kentucky was willing to have some conversations with us about how we can align to their strategies. My role at Compass One is to help our clients across the country understand the importance of integrating our services into their strategic plans so we can all just get better together.
You both mentioned how important these kinds of partnerships are. Why right now are they so important for a provider, a vendor, for a supplier, or an organization in the life sciences industry space?
Jayme, a lot of times we have thought traditionally, and sometimes we say the word vendor. We're talking about partners because I think words do matter here in how we think about these integrations and these relationships. I love Jeff's term, better together. It's 1 + 1 doesn't just equal 2. How do we think about that integration? We all have the same outcomes. We view this as expertise, force multiplier, the ability to think broader than one client. We are going to do something one time a year or every 5 years in some of our business segments, whereas Jeff and the team may be doing it at 10 locations, 20, 100, 1,000, whatever. How do we lean into that? As it relates to UK and our life cycle, we are growing rapidly right now to serve the Commonwealth's health needs at a higher level. Our mission at the University of Kentucky is rather distinct. It's focused, but it is to advance Kentucky in everything we do. As we're thinking about whether it's our higher ed side of our business or our healthcare, we have to have partners because they drive us. They help us to achieve those outcomes faster. They help us to think differently and be better.
I was in DC yesterday at an internal leadership team meeting, and we were talking about partner strategy and the importance of these types of things. I got this eureka moment. I reflect back on my healthcare career, and I've been in healthcare for 30 years. And is this one of the more complicated environments in healthcare that we've seen in our tenures in healthcare? There's been some moments in time, 2008, 1997, 2010. You can go back and think about the times where things got complicated. This is a unique time, and it's really complicated. There's a lot being thrown at healthcare and the health systems in particular, requiring them to pivot. It's just difficult. You can't do it on your own, and you have to rely on partners. And if you think about somebody like Compass One as a vendor, it just changes the whole context of the relationship, and it's not in a positive way. Thinking about a partner, thinking about somebody that's sitting across the table or next to you at the table and working on things together. It's so important right now, and probably more important than any other time that we thought about in the previous decades even.
I like how you both have focused on it's much more than just a transactional, a vendor relationship. What does it take to go from a vendor relationship to a true partnership? There's obviously a lot of work and time in between that.
There's three things that come to mind. One, is there equal desire from both partners? We're in different positions institutionally. Was there an equal desire to do more and be more? There's a commitment, in this case, from Compass One, because we're asking for more. Number two, we have to have that shared vision about values. All of our relationships, all of our partnerships, there has to be value alignment. There's going to be risk transfer. If the values don't work, nothing else is going to work. It's not about the money. It's not about the term. It's not about the investment. It's got to be centered. We call it pro principles, but another way to say it is values. And then the number three, is there a focus on the future? Long-term success, Stephen Covey's one of the 7 habits. Is there an end in mind that we're aligned on? With Compass One Healthcare, we saw that early, and we have tried to invest in that because we know it's going to yield better outcomes. We can share all these great stories about some of our facility projects and other things we're doing here, but it's helping us when we think about those three things. That is the next step in our journey.
I'd only add one thing to your three, and that's a level of trust. You've got to have that foundation of trust with your partners. We've got to trust University of Kentucky or any other health system that we're working with, and they've got to trust us. And I talk to our operators a lot about that because the table stakes are important. If we're not getting the day-to-day operational things right, that level of trust erodes, and we can't have these conversations. So my test in any organization is to say, are we hitting it out of the park operationally speaking first? And then secondly, do you trust us enough to share your strategic vision with us? If you can give me a copy of your strategic plan, if you can talk me through your vision, your values, your next 5 years, what you're going to look like, where you're going to expand, how you're going to grow, how you're going to gain market share, then I know that we're ready to have a different type of conversation with that organization. If they say, hold on, I'm not comfortable sharing that with you, then it's already a red flag that we haven't built that level of trust. It's almost like a dating period before you get into the marriage. And those foundational areas have to be well established.
Makes a lot of sense. Let's talk specifically about what you're doing within the UK and Compass One partnership. What are the overall goals of that relationship? What are some of those projects and initiatives that you've been working on?
It started with a conversation back in November of last year. We got into a room and we just talked about the potentials and opportunities and aligning across those three areas. And we had a laundry list of things that we could all do together. But we all know the challenge with that in healthcare is if you've got 100 different things, then the likelihood of you being successful at all 100 of those things starts to erode. In the subsequent conversations, we whittled that down and honed in on 3 or 4 main areas that we were going to sink our teeth into and start to advance. It was around facilities design, building out a malnutrition program. It was about employee well-being and workforce education. It was about specifically targeting dietitians in the organization. Is there a way to advance their career and make them more satisfied in their job by allowing them to grow and mature and even build out into a master's program through a relationship with the University of Kentucky? So those were the 4 specific areas that we decided to start on. Eric, tell us a little bit about the facilities design. I know that's really near and dear to your heart.
One little adjustment is we want to dedicate a day on a regular basis away from the office where we can sit down with our partner and dream. The best way to determine what we're going to do is what we don't do. We have a tendency to not want to prioritize things. I'll speak for UK sometimes is we want to do everything. We got to narrow that down. We're super excited about our engagement with Compass One when we talk about infrastructure. We have significant facility needs at the institution. We are going to expend about $3 billion in the next few years on some amazing projects. A new cancer and advanced ambulatory facility. It's a 550,000 square foot facility. That dirt is being moved today. And then we're going to have over a $2 billion new expansion of our hospital that's going to provide even improved ability to provide access for the Commonwealth. One of the things we said from the very beginning is when we do everything at the University of Kentucky, we do it with a big table. Had a meeting this morning, had 20 people around the table talking about diverse thoughts and opinions and ideas of how do we get to the end of the mine. When we're talking about a new cancer facility, we're talking about an expansion of our hospital environment and a new tower or two. How do we think about Compass One? What do they know about building hospitals? What do they know about what you could put in a teaching kitchen in a cancer and advanced ambulatory? Those are home-based type things. They're going to bring a lot to the table and have been already that's going to help make that outcome. Are they going to be one who's providing some of those services? Of course. But when we think about environmental, or we think about patient sitters, or we think about all the other services in this great continuum that Compass One offers, how do we engage them at the beginning? That's going to make the finished product better. We're going to know where to put the kitchen design strategy and how to think about that differently. How we're going to use automation to help us in the future. All those types of things. How do we think about an Amazon walkout strategy in ambulatory spaces and the whole suite of services that they know what's around the corner? And it's one time for us where we're building a hospital every 10 to 20 years, where every month they may be participating in one. It's helped us to be more innovative, to understand creativity. And also there is an operations and maintenance opportunity of when we're thinking about just the service provider cost if they're engaged in those decisions at the beginning. A lot of positives on this already, a lot still in front of us, but super excited.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Besides your architecture partner, having somebody who's got some intricate knowledge of how things get done behind the scenes, there's still a lot of initiatives that are ongoing, but what's next for this partnership? Do you have plans for that next sit down where you get the dream building going, or are there some things that you're already dreaming about?
We talk a lot about infrastructure. Obviously, we get excited about facilities. We see these tangible things, these amazing 2 million square foot structures and all this types of stuff. The challenge for us in healthcare especially is the talent. The ability to recruit, retain, sustain our talent and lifelong learning, lifelong educational opportunities, where then in some ways it may be quote unquote forced upon us because you need a higher level of designation. And we think about RDs. But how do we then use the higher ed part of our business where we have 36,000 students, hundreds of academic programs? How do we work together to customize those opportunities or use what's already out there to sustain some of the talent? That is one of those big rocks that's in front of us. Jeff made a really critical point earlier that you can only do these big things or these big rocks when you've taken care of the base. So the blocking and tackling, that operational excellence that we already have with Compass One, that's why we can get to some of these things. That base has really assisted us at the university in achieving some of our outcomes and goals just in the last few years.
Now it gets down to the brass tacks. We've built that foundation of execution, and now we've got to execute on these too. The two of us have a track record of working well together on the pebbles to get those right. And now these big rocks have been broken into little pebbles. So we've got to project manage the heck out of this. We've got to make sure we get it right. We've got to execute on all these things. It doesn't just become a nice conversation. It doesn't just become that first initial meeting, that we are moving the needle, that we are getting these things done together, and that when we come out of this, we can keep adding on to the list. Let's talk about innovation that's coming around the corner that's 3 years out. We want to introduce some robots or, whatever it is. It's exciting, and we build the momentum and continue to tackle things together. It makes all of our jobs and lives so much more rewarding when we're all working together. I hope that's coming across. It's just something that we believe at Compass One, and goes back to that shared values and vision in our sights, and we're going to all get there together. It's such a wonderful time.
You start with that shared vision and ongoing trust in each other. But the work doesn't stop once you get there. There's still work to do. You got to keep at it. It is an ongoing long-term commitment to each other. That's a really valuable part of this partnership story. As a partner, you're building a long-term relationship. Just like any other relationship, takes work.
you've got to have the right people in the room. That was one of the things early on at University of Kentucky when we had that breakout day. We had all the right people from our team, from University of Kentucky's team, from the chief medical officer to the chief strategy officer, to all of the executives were bought into this. And that's critical and will enable us to be successful quicker because we've got all the right parties in the room and on board and marching the same direction.
The other thing that helps us when we think about at least the academic health systems in America is that we think about the higher ed part of our business in a comprehensive enterprise called UK has thought about partners more progressively than the healthcare part of our business. That has helped us. A lot of the healthcare, we think about a lot of our partners as vendors too much. And we have some team members that think about it like that because they have not known this other idea. So you do have to break out, and people matter. And you have to have that executive leadership, but it's not just one, it's many. And we have to talk differently and understand why and explain the why and spend some blocking and tackling with our team members too to break them out of what it used to be. And that's something that a regular and predictable cadence of interactions, that blocking and tackling, getting together on a regular basis in a big table setting. And clearly, you got to have some successes. We can't just talk about things. We got to have some ribbons cut, some things open, some outcomes achieved, and then you start to roll down the hill. It gets easier, honestly, in some ways, but ramps up. But then to sustain it, it's like recruiting basketball players. We're pretty good at that. Once you do that well, it's easier to keep doing it. That's the spirit of our partnership with Compass One as well.
That is a great final insight. Thank you so much, Eric and Jeff, for joining me today, for sharing all the great insights. And thank you to our listeners for your attention today on Sg2 Perspectives.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review us, and or follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn at Sg2 Healthcare. And if you want to talk more about innovative healthcare strategies, you can always email me at sg2perspectives@sg2.com. Finally, Sg2 is a Vizient company, and there are a bunch of Vizient podcasts that you might like. You can find them at Vizient /podcasts. Have a great day.